Good morning. It is Thursday, the 19th of February. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, US President Donald Trump is set to host his first official Board of Peace gathering in Washington today. Ahead of the meeting, which will take place at the US Institute of Peace, Trump, who will chair the board, described it as potentially the most consequential international body in history. The initiative has already, though, sparked strong reactions. Critics warn it reflects an imperial agenda and could sideline the UN, but supporters argue it could serve as a practical mechanism focused on reconstruction efforts, particularly in Gaza. We can take a listen now to the White House Press Secretary, Caroline Levitt.
I don't think that peace should be partisan or political or controversial. And of course, the administration wants all those who were invited to join the Board of Peace to join. And this president has a very bold and ambitious plan and vision to rebuild and reconstruct Gaza, which is well underway because of the Board of Peace. This is a legitimate organization.
And your news correspondent, Maya de la Bum, is following the story for us and joins me now in the studio. Good morning, Maya.
Good morning, Maeve.
So look, a big day for this Board of Peace. Brussels has sent the EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean, Suiza, but so many ambassadors are furious about this. That's what you've been reporting. Tell us more.
Yes, diplomats told us that there was a very tense meeting in Brussels yesterday with many countries, including and especially France and Spain, saying that they were not consulted. So they are sending Suiza in Washington, D.C., but, member states should validate the mandate of Mrs. Suiza. And this is what they have been saying in this meeting, where other countries also were furious because, this is a foreign policy matter and you need a mandate validated by the 27 EU countries to be able to send a commissioner to Washington, D.C. and participate in a very controversial entity, which is the Board of Peace. And on top of that, I think that, most diplomats say that Mrs. Suiza is a very political figure. This is a Commissioners are political figures. And so why would you send a political figure to D.C.? I mean, the idea for many member states and many diplomats who we spoke to said, we need a lower level person. We need a civil servant. We need a diplomat, not a political figure. And on top of all of this, I think what we've gathered in our reporting is that diplomats are also furious because they think this participation of Mrs. Suiza sends the wrong signal. Because it means that, in a way, it means that Europe is validating the Board of Peace. And we know that the Board of Peace is a very controversial entity. Most member countries, and again, I'm talking about France, Spain, and I'm excluding Hungary and, Bulgaria, which have said that they would participate in this Board of Peace. But the reasoning behind this is that it sends the wrong signal that Europe is validating the Board of Peace, which most countries aren't.
Yeah, so I'd say there's some awkward phone calls now between the Commission and the capitals. But meanwhile, the Commission is standing by this decision.
Yeah, the Commission is standing by this decision because they want to have a voice on this issue, on the issue of Gaza. You know that the European Union is the largest donor of aid in Palestine. It supports the Palestinian Authority. It has supported the Palestinian Authority for decades. And it thinks that, it should participate because this is an issue, this is a reconstruction of Gaza. And Europe should be involved in this reconstruction of Gaza. So what we hear from the Commission is we stand by because we are not joining the Board of Peace, but we need to have a voice. Otherwise, we will be excluded. And, our role in this region is crucial, as they tell us.
OK, Maya de la Bum, thank you so much for that live update. And, of course, to find out who else will be in Washington, D.C. for those talks, do check out yournews.com. But now, coming up, we'll be joined by Salome Zurishvili, a Georgian politician who served as the president of Georgia from 2018 to 2024. She was the first female to take on this role. Located between Eastern Europe and Western Asia, Georgia was plunged into a political and constitutional crisis after disputed elections that triggered mass anti-government protests. For its part, the European Parliament refuses to recognise the current authorities of the Georgian Dream Party and continue to see Salome Zurishvili as the legitimate president. So good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Europe Today. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you.
So the big story for us, of course, here today is Trump's Board of Peace. If you were still in office as president, would you sign up?
I think that I know that our neighbors have signed up, and I think that it's very important that the region, the Caucasus, stays united and stays present in all the formats where it can be, and especially for Georgia, it's very important to be a subject of international relations and not only an object, which unfortunately we have become in the past period.
And what should the EU
forgotten.
do? You can see there's big dispute now in the EU about who should go and who should not.
Well, that's their own subject, which I'm not here to comment upon. But I think that for a small country like Georgia, which is faced with one enemy, Russia, that we know how it behaves, it's very important to be present in all the formats where it can have its voice heard.
And you were at the Munich Security Conference. Marco Rubio was also there, and he was describing the fact that the EU faces, or Europe faces, civilization erasure. How do you interpret that?
Well, I think that it has been, first of all, I was not at the Munich conference this year, but I think that it is not true. It's not what happens in one day that suddenly Europe's and this civilization is erased. And on the contrary, I think that what is happening is a wake-up of Europe, which is discovering that together with its huge economic power, its huge civilizational power, it also needs force, strength, and military power. In part, that's also thanks to the wake-up call from the United States. So I think that all of that coming together is very good news for the Europeans and for the to-be Europeans.
And you mentioned the threat of Russia earlier. We know that the talks took place yesterday in Geneva for 2 days, trying to end that war in Ukraine. Do you think they will ever come to an end?
I think, of course, it will come to an end one day. What is important is how it comes to an end, because as neighbors of Russia, all the neighbors of Russia know that Russia has been a constant invader, a constant aggressor, and a constant imperialist power that doesn't know where its borders stop. So what is very important out of these peace negotiations is the, of course, sovereignty of Ukraine, territorial integrity of Ukraine, and also the fact that Russia recognizes elsewhere that it cannot occupy the territory of its neighbors. That's true for Abkhazia and Ossetia. That's true for North Dnepr, Transnistria.
Is Putin interested in peace, do you think, at these talks?
He's never interested in peace. He has to be brought to peace by constraint. And I think that in that sense, probably the uncertainty that Putin is probably experiencing with Trump and Trump's actions is the best ally for forcing him down to a peace agreement. Maybe it's the best time that we have to see Russia having to recognize that somebody is both unpredictable and stronger than he is.
And meanwhile in Georgia, what about the path towards EU membership? It's on ice now, talks are on hold.
Well, it's a very thick ice at this time because everything that is happening within Georgia today is distancing us from the European path, from the European reforms. We have a capture of the state by Russia. We have a Russian model, in fact, being put into place at a very rapid pace, and that's costless for Russia. Much more costless than, of course, the military intervention in Ukraine. With us, it's taking over institutions, democratic old principles, but there is a civil society, unlike in Russia or unlike in Belarus, a civil society that is fighting, that is resilient.
And what more can you do here? What more can you do here?
What more can I do? Be heard here, but I'm in Georgia. I'm not here. I'm going out just to have the voice of the Georgian people heard. More attention to Georgia, which is not easy at a time when there are so important and many crises around us. But it's still very important that we have the moral support, because the people that are fighting for a European democratic Georgia. And we think that it's important not only for Georgia, Netherlands, but it's important for the future of a strong Europe, very present in the Caucasus and also American partners.
Okay, Salome Saraswashvili, thank you so much for being our guest this morning here on Europe Today. But now, moving on, speaking on Europe Today just yesterday, the US Ambassador to the European Union, Andrew Puzder, said that Europe has a major problem with mass migration. This after Marco Rubio warned that Europe faces civilization erasure. Our Jakob Janis takes a look at the data.
You might be wondering, is the EU experiencing mass migration? And you see, there isn't a simple yes or no answer, because the numbers are actually falling. Last year, Frontex, so the EU Border and Coast Guard Agency, reported over 25% drop in irregular crossings to around 180,000. And this is less than a half the total recorded in 2023. But public perception tells a completely different story. And for clarity, let's narrow it down strictly to irregular migration, so people crossing EU borders without official permission. Because the feeling of a crisis is so strong, mainstream politicians are adapting policies that used to be considered taboo. And take Denmark as an example. Led by a center-left government, they are pushing a zero-refugee policy and advocating for asylum processing outside of Europe. And as this Denmark model spreads, the European Commission and major players like Germany are now officially backing the idea of return hubs in third countries. But this new approach is tearing the EU apart. And while the European Parliament just voted to allow deportations to unrelated third countries, Spain is going the opposite way. Madrid recently announced it will grant legal status to 500,000 undocumented migrants, and that raised strong reservations in Brussels, because papers in Spain might mean free travel across the Schengen zone, directly threatening the EU's strict new crackdown on irregular migration. Meanwhile, over 4 million Ukrainian war refugees live in the EU legally. Fleeing Russia's invasion, they did not come by choice. And, what's important, they did receive official EU protection. But when you walk down the street, perception doesn't care about visas or paperwork. And that is why this clash is no longer about policies and numbers, or even the migrants themselves.
Jakob Janis there. Well, moving on, Real Madrid's 1-0 victory over Benfica in the UEFA Champions League in Portugal has been overshadowed this week by fresh allegations of racist abuse. The 25-year-old Brazilian professional footballer, Vinicius Jr., was allegedly verbally abused, prompting the referee to hold up the match and trigger an anti-racism protocol. For more on the impact of this, we can now cross over to Lisbon, where Euronews' correspondent João Azevedo is standing by for us outside the very football stadium where the incident occurred. Good morning, João. Just tell us what happened and what's next.
Yeah, good morning, Maeve. Good morning to you and the team over there in Brussels. It did happen at the stadium right behind me, as you said. You know, Vinicius Jr., he had just scored the goal. It was a monumental goal, curled in a shot into the top corner. But that masterpiece triggered some ugly scenes over there on the pitch. You know, Vinicius Jr., he also had a somehow provocative celebration, but still he can celebrate as he wants. And actually, that celebration, it did put off the fans in the stands and also some Benfica players on the pitch, especially Prestiani, who confronted Vinicius Jr. He actually pulled his shirt up over his mouth, and he did tell him something. Actually, Vinicius Jr. Spotted it to the referee, reported it to the referee, saying that he had been racially abused. Madrid's French striker Kylian Mbappe confirming that version at the end of the match, telling reporters in the mixed zone that he heard Prestiani call Vinicius Jr. a monkey 5 times times. Prestiani denied those allegations, with Benfica as expected siding with their player. And I'm going to quote a part of the statement the club put out. I think we can put it up on the screen now. Benfica reiterates that it fully supports and believes in the version presented by the player Gianluca Prestiani. The club now regrets the defamation campaign to which the player has been subjected. However, some football legends, including Thierry Henry, also Mick Richard, they did hit out at Prestiani's behavior, and there was also some sharp criticism coming from within Benfica circles. Take Luizão, for example, a former captain of the club. It's someone who made over 500 appearances for the club. He didn't pull any punches. He wrote on social media. I think we can also see that statement. This is what he had to say. I love Benfica. It's my second skin. This message makes it worse. He's obviously referring to Benfica's statement, saying that that message makes it worse because it's a lie. It was a racist act, yes, and I am ashamed of that. So pretty strong words there from Luizão. Now, UEFA has appointed an ethics and disciplinary agent who will be charged with investigating the incident. Of course, a judicial battle is now going to start. You have Madrid players saying that if Prestiani was not going to say anything wrong, then why did he feel the need to cover his mouth? But then on the other hand, Benfica saying that it's not possible for any Madrid players really to say that they heard any racial slur coming from Prestiani because there was a rowdy atmosphere in the stadium with a lot of noise, and the distance between the players, that just makes it impossible for any player to hear any racial slur from the opponent. So now, as I said, a judicial battle will be happening, and we do know that, of course, if Prestiani is found guilty of racial abuse, he lands in hot water. Of course, he risks a pretty heavy sanction, potentially a 10-match ban.
And Joe, just tell us, is this an isolated case, and what does it say about racism in football?
Yeah, it's not an isolated case, actually, and especially as for Vinicius. Vinicius Jr. is certainly not a stranger in this kind of episodes. For example, since 2022, he's filed 18 legal complaints for alleged racist abuse. So this is a player who's been involved in this kind of incidents quite often. The most high-profile one maybe dating back to May 2023. It happened at Mestalla Stadium in Valencia when Vinicius Jr. confronted some spectators in the stands. And ultimately, 3 Valencia fans were sentenced to 8 months in prison. They also got banned from stadiums for 2 years. They even apologized to Vinicius Jr. So that was the very first conviction for hate crimes in Spain, and obviously a big win for Vinicius Jr. You know, some Valladolid fans, 5 Valladolid fans also got sentenced to some time in jail following some racist abuse directed at Vinicius Jr. And this recently, as January 2026, like some weeks ago, a group of Albacete fans, they were heard outside of the stadium ahead of a Copa del Rey match against Real Madrid, singing racist chants towards Vinicius Jr. Now, that said, UEFA does not not have a really strong track record when it comes to punishing racism. There was a 2021 Europa League match with Slavia Prague's center back found guilty of racially abusing Glasgow Rangers midfielder. But other than that, it's been a very light fine here and then, so we'll see how things shake out.
João Azevedo, thank you so much for that very comprehensive live update there from Lisbon, and thank you so much for watching. That does bring this edition of Europe Today to an end. For any more news and analysis, any of the stories we're covering for you here on Euronews, do visit euronews.com. Take care and see you very soon here on Euronews.